Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar will be on the topic of best practices for security visibility, where we're going to discuss TAP versus SPAN. If you don't know me, my name is Marcus. I work with Wavelink's channel enablement team, bringing all this educational content and resources like this to you and our partners. And I'm very, very happy to have you all joining us for what is going to be a very well received and very insightful topic. The webinar feedback has been really strong, and thank you to everyone who's reached out to provide the positive feedback. We are really excited to be bringing this one to you. Why are we running this webinar? SPAN's been a part of our basic networking for a really long time, but our cyber ecosystems change. We grow as businesses, implementing different cyber principles and extending our cyber systems into different facets of our network. So we're joined by some fantastic speakers today. Rashid, our in-house pre-sales engineer, and Ben, our technical director from Garland Technology. Rashid and Ben, thank you so much for joining us. I'll pass over to you, Rashid, to start introductions.
So hey guys, I'm Rashid, pre-sales lead for Wavelink. I especially look after scale-up vendors, and Garland Technology is one of those vendors. So please do reach out if you have any questions after the webinar. Happy to help you. So the agenda for today is the first thing we're probably going to discuss is what exactly is a SPAN, sort of like SPAN code, the risk around like SPAN, and how do we solve these risks with the TAP. Various types of TAP solutions that exist today, and the best practice of deploying TAPs in a network environment. And then again, we'll look at a lot of examples and use cases where essentially TAP's better than SPAN. So we believe in saying the truth is in the packets. So you rely on your network security monitoring tools to deliver the truth about what's been happening on your network. Garland can provide those packets reliably and cost effectively. So today's requirements for security monitoring, management, compliance, and auditing of our networks require like full real-time access into the packets that flow through our network. The goal of network security compliance require full visualization of the network and the packets therein. So real visualization is everything. So if you cannot see an issue like an attack, misusage, inefficiency, how are you going to understand it and resolve it? So what we've noticed recently is we've entered a higher utilization environment with many times more frames in the network. So we've moved from like 10 Mbps to 40 to 100 gigabytes full duplex network. So we've entered into an era of data security. So what exactly is a SPAN? So SPAN essentially means switchboard analyzer. So as switches and routers developed, there came a technology called as SPAN/mirroring ports. And monitoring was like off and running as soon as SPAN came in. So analyzers and monitors no longer had to be connected to your network directly. So engineers would essentially use the SPAN port or /mirror port and direct packets from the switch or router to test for analysis. So SPAN port usually indicates the ability to copy traffic from any or all sorts of data ports into a single unused port, excuse me. So the SPAN or monitor port was originally designed as a quality assurance test point for the manufacturers, and later on became a visualization access point as an afterthought. So port mirroring, which is also known as a SPAN, uh, uh, are essentially like designated ports on the network appliance that are programmed to send a copy of the network packets from seen on one port to another port. So where the packets can be essentially analyzed. So once you go and set up SPAN, so you'd be able to look into the packets that are being sent from that port onto another port. Now, the key thing to note is like many switches have a limit on number of the SPAN monitoring ports, and oftentimes that's capped at 2. So there's various types of span ports that are available. So the first one that you have is a local span. So a local span essentially mirrors traffic from one or more interface on the switch to one or more interface on the same switch. Then again, you have something called as a remote span. So this is an extension of your span, and it's called as an RSpan. So RSpan essentially allows you to monitor traffic from source ports distributed over multiple switches, which means that you can centralize your network capture device. RSpan works by mirroring the traffic from the source ports of an RSpan session onto a VLAN that's dedicated to an RSpan session. Then again, what kind of happens is that VLAN is trunked onto other switches, allowing RSpan session to be transported across multiple switches. Now, on the switch that contains the destination port of the session, traffic from RSpan session, now session is simply mirrored out to that destination port. And finally, you have something called as an ER span. And now this is a Cisco proprietary technology. So what ER span essentially brings is the GRA traffic, all captured for traffic, and it allows to be extended across layer 3 domains. So it's so like I said earlier on, it's a Cisco proprietary span. The benefits, so it's essentially the benefits of span is it's a low cost way to monitor your traffic, freeing all that budget for other security tools. It's quick and easy to implement. In OT networks, typically where you have like low sort of consumption or low sort of traffic, packet loss is less common than in IT. Now, there's also limitations with span. So if a switch resource under load must choose between passing normal traffic and passing span data, the span loses. The reason is the span traffic is treated with the lowest priority. And what you oftentimes notice is the mirrored frames are arbitrarily discarded. And just because the switch has a functionality, which essentially means preserving network traffic in any situation. So as an example, so if you look at like transporting RSpan traffic through like the inter-switch link, which shares like an ISL bandwidth with like regular network traffic, the network traffic takes priority over it. So knowing that the span port arbitrarily drops traffic under specific local conditions, so what strategies must like users adopt so that they cannot miss any frames? The best strategy is to make decisions based on the traffic levels of the configuration, and when in doubt, use span port only for relatively low throughput traffic. So some of the limitations include like your legacy OT switches do not support span because the priorities for OT are different. So typically what you notice with IT is you have your CIA tribe, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And oftentimes with OT, once a device gets put in, it's there for years. So you'd be dealing with like really old switches. And some of these switches might not support span at all. Now, span can oftentimes introduce security vulnerabilities by creating access path. So typically what kind of happens is, so once the span port's set up, there's no auditing or monitoring of it. And that introduces a massive sort of security hole for attackers trying to access and looking to visualize the traffic inside your network. Duplication is an issue. And oftentimes what you notice is like duplicate packets increase system load, requiring stronger systems and deduplication tools. And finally, it adds a lot of operational complexity because there's no way to go ahead and audit any span ports. What happens when you go ahead and upgrade a switch? How does it affect the span port? And even with like low traffic networks, all their switches may still drop the traffic. So that being said, I'll just pass it on to Ben.
So my name's Ben Burt. I'm the Technical Director for Garland covering APJ, based out of Melbourne, Australia. Really appreciate your time joining this webinar. I think it's a very important use case in a lot of scenarios, And we do get, you know, it is a common use case where we see people wanting tap versus span, and they don't necessarily know when are the best scenarios to implement these technologies. Thanks, Rash. We really see span versus tap as a risk scenario. So to the points Rash was making before, switches are a network device that is technically vulnerable. So they're a device you constantly have to patch. There's constantly vulnerabilities and attacks being done against these devices. So it's another device on your network that can be attacked. Switch is bidirectional. Traffic can be injected into these, and it allows people to inject bad packets or malicious things into these traffic flows. Because you're running a function on the switch, these switches can often be oversubscribed. People try and do a span, trying to do any-to-any. It's not really, you know, a switch is not really designed to pump that amount of traffic into a single destination port. So it becomes a real issue with congestion, trying to aggregate that traffic to a single location. Switches get misconfigured. So we see customers that don't have very good change control on their switches, or they don't have an audit process. Normally, a span port or a mirror port is used as a troubleshooting use case. So an engineer might go on site, they're trying to troubleshoot an issue, they'll set up a span port to do a packet capture. They'll wipe the packet capture when they go to leave. Unfortunately, in that scenario, we're also seeing them wipe the span port that's used to collect data for their network visibility or detection response tool. So switches off limits to possibly connect to a security solution. So again, in some of these scenarios, the switch is owned by the network team, not the security team. So it can drive a bit of conjecture into who controls that device, what functions are the responsibility of the security or network team. You know, it's another thing that I think is very important that doesn't really get covered in this case is that, you know, a span port is great for a single use case. It might be, you know, a quick deployment, but again, in real world scenarios where that traffic is imperative, you know, this is traffic that is relied on by your detection response tools. You know, having a dedicated device to do this, where it captures the traffic, errors and all, is very important. What is a network tap? A network tap is a dedicated hardware device that's built to monitor all traffic going in and out of a port. In the scenario here, we've got a tap that's got multiple SFP ports. So you have your A and your B ports, or your network ports, and we monitor all that traffic to the destination ports on the right. So again, the primary function of this device is to send all packets. So it doesn't matter whether it's errored, it might be link aggregation, these kind of things. All of that traffic is passed into the monitor ports on the switch. So we're not dropping any packets at all. It's all at the line rate. The other good thing about this, they are invisible to hackers. In a lot of cases, these devices don't have IP addresses, they don't have MAC addresses, they're not manageable. And with the case of fiber taps, they're actually completely passive. So they don't have any power, they don't need maintenance, they don't need patching. These are invisible to a network. And they don't impact the live network. So again, you pull power out of a tap, or in a passive tap, you don't have power. These devices are completely invisible and don't require maintenance. So again, what is a tap? A tap is a device that collects data and duplicates it to another port. So here we've got, in a scenario where we've got a router and a switch, our A and a B ports. So you might see this is east-west. What this tap is doing is sending any traffic flowing between the switch and the router to port C, and any traffic flowing between the router and the switch to port D. So this is called an aggregation tap. So what your security tool is, collects the data from between these two traffic flows and aggregates them and runs analysis over these traffic flows. Next slide, please, Raj. So a tap isn't just an aggregation tap or a breakout tap. We have different modes of tap. We have what we call an aggregation tap. that in that scenario, we can replicate that traffic and send it to multiple locations. So because a lot of generally used in OT because they're low bandwidth, so that means we could send the east and the west traffic out port C and the west and the east traffic out port D. So again, this enables to send traffic to multiple security tools. Because of this function, this also allows us to do what we call a span or regen. So in this scenario, rather than having an in and an out, we essentially have two receive paths. So we could receive traffic from multiple switches on a span port and regenerate that to other ports. So again, if you've got a bake-off between multiple security tools, or you've got a packet capture in one location and a NDR tool in the other location, we can regenerate that traffic to the other ports. And last but not least is filtering. We can filter this traffic based on IP address, based on VLAN, these sorts of things, and we can choose what destination would we want to send that traffic to. So again, it gives us a lot of options in terms of deployment and making sure we meet the use case that the customer's trying to solve. Next slide, please, Raj. Very important with network taps. So again, we have span aggregators and network taps. The function of a tap is to ensure network availability. So if you remove power from a network tap, essentially your A and B network ports are merged together and the traffic will continue to flow. So again, you can take this device out of path of the network and it essentially what we call fail safe. So rather than fail open or fail close, we like to say fail safe, ensuring that your network has full availability during a power outage or a scenario where we need to turn the tap off. Next slide, please. Okay, so span ports, some of the use cases we see, or a scenario where we might use a tap over a span, scenarios where it's hard to connect. We see some OT environments where some customers have got some really old switches or they're unmanaged switches where they don't support a span port or a mirror port. We also see scenarios where they've got unusual media types, so it might be 10 base still, or their upstream devices are a different connectivity method. Configuration switches prohibited. Again, it might be owned by the network team, not the security team. There's conjecture there as to who owns that functionality. Space constraints. Again, they don't want to install another device, or there's power supply concerns. Existing resources. So a tap, as I said, is a low power device, or in some instances no power. They're not managed. So again, a customer might not want to deploy a new series of switches or a new series of sensors onto a site, which they have to maintain and have operational overhead. So by having a tap, that solves that use case. Remote sites need to connect to a head end. We see a lot of fiber rings in OT scenarios. By daisy chaining the taps together, we can negate the need for some major interconnection infrastructure. So again, it allows us to do some really interesting scenarios in terms of deployment of these switches. Increasing vulnerability. Again, we're seeing scenarios where span ports drop packets. To Rash's point, if the CPU gets overloaded or there's congestion on a port, straight away you drop that traffic. We're also seeing a lot of legal government enforced requirements to monitor east-west traffic. Again, in these scenarios, a span port is great, but with that congestion, it adds complexity. So having a dedicated hardware device to capture that east-west traffic is something we're seeing more. The other thing is that, if you put in another security tool, you're adding complexity. It's something that someone else has to learn how to maintain and operate. With a tap, it's simply a very basic device with little to no configuration required. Next slide, please, Rash. To the point with OT networks, we see some really interesting use cases. We see some customers that still have 10 base. We see a lot of 100 base FX. We make fiber taps, we make copper taps. anything from 10 meg up to, we go beyond 10 gig. We go up to hundreds of gig in terms of fiber taps. With the taps in the image here, we've actually got it DIN rail mounted. There's a DIN rail mounting on the right-hand side. We can have DC power, AC power, and they're really small form factors. Some of these are portable, and we have field taps, which are USB connected and sit on a desk for troubleshooting certain scenarios. Next slide, please, Rash. So along with having taps, doing out-of-band network monitoring, you also have a point where you need to aggregate that traffic. So we've got what we call we right-size our products. So if you've got a scenario where you've got a small number of taps and you want to aggregate those to a single location, we've got devices that can receive that traffic, aggregate it, and send it on to the upstream device. We also have devices that do tap and aggregation as well. So in this scenario, you can see we've got a couple of fiber ports on the left-hand side. So again, this negates the need to have an SFP plugged in those. If you've got dedicated fiber links, you want to go directly into the device. Again, this gives us the flexibility with some of our products and gives a cost-effective solution to the customer. So OT, and there's a lot of regulations coming around with OT and SOCI and these sorts of things. We're seeing a lot of demand for hardware data diodes. So again, this is ensuring one-way traffic in the network. This really gives the scenario where a customer can ensure that their traffic is protected. It might be a proof of concept deployment where someone wants to tap and receive information for their NDR. I've seen scenarios where, for some reason, the network device is injecting resets back into the network. We've also seen scenarios where we've got customers want to do monitoring, or a manufacturer wants to do monitoring of their device on a customer's site. This ensures that that device can be monitored without any risk of that injection back into the network. Again, these taps have no IP addresses. The coppers are all fail-safe, and fibers are fail-safe. Now, the other good thing about Garland Technologies, all our products are designed, tested, manufactured in the US today. So again, if there's a legal requirement there or there's a government requirement to do those, and what this all adds up to is that we help with compliance and regulatory guidance, things like NERC, CIP, SOCI. You know, these are standards that we help our customers comply to. Slide, please, Rash. Again, really making sure that we put this home. We want, these products are simple, easy to deploy, and no overhead. So again, unmanaged taps, you don't have to maintain them, you don't have to patch them. There's no hardware subscription fees. When you buy our products, you buy the hardware for life. There's no ongoing subscription. You don't have to enable ports with certain features. They don't dial home. So again, in OT environments or certain customer environments, this definitely is a big advantage of our products. And last but not least, easy installation. In most scenarios, you plug the A and the B ports connected and you're done. Thanks, Rash. The best way to connect an OT sensor when an unmanaged switch is present. So use case number one, what we're trying to solve here. Next slide, please, Rash. The best solution here is a portable network tap. Again, in this scenario, we're connecting between the HMI and the switch. Allows the tap to exit the network when span port is off limit, again, because we don't have the capability to do a span port on that switch. We're receiving traffic as required, and we ensure connectivity on that network we mandate that traffic is ensured and allowed on the network because we've got fail-safe technology. So if that tap, if we lose power on site, or that tap, you know, if they're worried about any kind of outage in that network, that device is always up and online. Next slide, please, Rash. The best way to connect to an OT sensor with a single port to two span links where there's concern about packet injection. In this scenario, a hardware data diode is ideal. So we're installing the data diode between collecting traffic from two span ports. the sensor will see both of those traffic flows. And again, because it's hardware, there's a hardware separation there. We're ensuring nothing from that security sensor can be injected back into that OT environment. Please, Rash. The best way to connect an OT sensor to a single span port with a single port with 9 span links. A packet broker or network aggregation device. So in this scenario, we're collecting traffic from 9 network span ports, collecting that data, aggregating it, and sending it to one security sensor. And I guess the one thing I'd note here is that this is you'd need to understand your traffic flows here. When it may be 1 gig links or 10 gig links, but we need to ensure that there's no congestion. And so OT environments are ideal for this scenario because they're generally low speed, low bandwidth connections. Best practice scenarios. Unmanaged switches, again, diving into these a little bit deeper. Customer needs to obtain visibility into their network traffic for their security sensor. In an OT environment, it's common to find legacy equipment. Often OT infrastructure will be based on unmanaged Ethernet switches. Customer has 2 methods to achieve this. So in this scenario, where the customer may want to get visibility into their PLCs, they want to understand the traffic flowing between their field devices, and they send some traffic to their operator control and monitoring terminals. Again, without upgrading the switch, a tap is a really cheap, simple, easy way to get visibility into these environments and sending it out of band to their security tool. So again, a customer is trying to get traffic from many locations on their environment, lots of different span ports. So what we're doing here, we're aggregating the traffic using a data diode, and each location, that data diode ensures that traffic is not injected back into the location. However, at the same time, we're aggregating all that traffic and sending upstream to a security sensor. And by having different multiple port configurations here, using the likes of SFPs, we've got lots of different connectivity options here. So we're aggregating all that traffic and sending it onto the security tool. Next, Rash. No free ports available for span. Similarly to our scenario before, where rather than upgrade the infrastructure at the site, a tap is a really easy way for us to get visibility into that environment at a low cost scenario. And again, by having aggregation or regen taps, we could send that to multiple locations. So it could be the HMI, it could be the IDS, it could be have a port available for troubleshooting on site. Next slide, please, Rash. Excellent. Span port with wrong media. Customer wants to retain visibility of the network for their security system. Span port is not always the right media type for the sensor. So we do see this a lot, where a sensor might have, certain requirements. They might have fiber inputs, they might have QSFP, they might have, higher speed uplinks. By putting in a tap and a media converter, we can convert that to fiber. We can do aggregation, send it onto different security tools. Probably the reverse of this is interesting as well. We do see scenarios where the security sensor might only support 1 gig or might only have a 1 gig port. So what we're able to do here is aggregate traffic and then load balance it out to multiple sensors at the head end. Limited span functionality. This is a scenario where they've only got 1 mirror port on the switch. Again, by putting us in path of that mirror port, we can replicate that traffic again to a HMI or onto an IDS. Again, that is a common scenario we see. Customer will deploy even some of the largest switches, and they'll only have 1 or 2 span ports available. The customer's trying to use it already for some kind of east-west communication. So again, this gives us the ability to capture that traffic without needing the span port. Multiple tool connectivity. So in this scenario here, we've got a customer might have multiple security tools that they want to inspect the traffic flows. So what we're doing here is collecting span from a whole heap of different locations. These could be taps as well. And we're sending it on to an IDS, network analyzer. We might have a forensics tool. We see in some finance scenarios, there's long-term packet capture, these sorts of things. Again, this can really assist in those scenarios. To the point earlier in the webinar, it's all truth's in the packets. It's all about getting that high fidelity data to those tools so that they can do their thing. Slide please, Rash. Remote location connectivity. Sorry, I'm starting to stumble a little bit. So in this scenario, we see a customer might have a security sensor located in their data center, and what they want to do, they want to capture traffic from their multiple sites and encapsulate it in GRE and send it to a central location. So the reason we encapsulate in GRE is so that we can maintain all the headers and the original traffic flows without having to identify traffic using VLANs or these sorts of things I've seen in interesting scenarios. So again, this is a really good one in that we can capture all of these data in locations, we can aggregate it, send it onto the remote location, decapsulate it at the other end, and spit it out the security sensor. Now, the GRE is a good example of this. We also see Genevieve, we also see VXLANs. So again, there's different ways we can encapsulate that traffic to send it onto a remote location. But this is probably the most common deployment scenario we see. With that, we'll go on to Q&A. Appreciate everyone's time, so please post your questions in the chat and feel free to give us a review. Hopefully it was useful to your time, you enjoyed it. Again, I appreciate all your time. To our company's mandate, the truth is in the packets. It is really all about making sure that you get high fidelity data to your security tools. Again, we don't compete with the security tools. We work with a lot of different vendors here. So if they don't have visibility in those traffic flows, you're missing out on getting the good stuff that they provide. Again, east-west visibility and span ports are definitely useful. I see scenarios where they're used all the time. But if the traffic is mission critical, or you need 100% fidelity in that traffic flows, then a tap is by far the best option.
So I just noticed a question. I just noticed a question here, Ben. So when does it make sense to use span over tap?
Yeah, so that is a customer by customer scenario. But again, in those scenarios where you have limited resources, your old infrastructure doesn't support span, you need a scenario where you need to ensure 100% data fidelity. It might be a really high bandwidth use case as well. We see scenarios where it might be tens or hundreds of gigabits, and a span port simply can't keep up with that amount of traffic with the resources on the switch. So again, anywhere it's mission critical, you need to go with the tap.
Right. The next question here is, are data diodes only used in OT networks?
No, we see them a lot in OT, and that's normally because government mandates tend to push them down that path. But we definitely see, we're starting to see them more in OT monitoring. IT monitoring. It might be IoT device that needs to have a dial home that they want to ensure it can't send any data back. Or it might be transactional, things like that, where they're sending one-way traffic and they need to ensure nothing is injected back. Some database replications, those sorts of things, where they don't need acknowledgements back. We do see those used in those scenarios as well.
Okay, another question here is, does tap/data diode can generate its own report based on the traffic flows, or is it dependent on third-party monitoring tool?
So we rely on third-party monitoring tools. We don't make network visibility tools in terms of packet storage, those sorts of things. We are purely about delivering packets to a tool. That being said, a packet broker or some of our larger taps do have monitoring and capability, so you can see uptime and port errors, those sorts of things, and maintain those. But again, a network tap itself, which is the scenario that we're talking about today, again, a lot of those are, they don't have hard drives, they don't have storage. So again, we're not giving visibility other than pass that on to the security tool of your choice.
All right, another question here is where does the box sit between which devices, and is the data captured in band?
Yeah, so we capture the traffic out of band. So again, we're replicating everything going between an A and a B device. Now, where I'd say that's generally the deployment depends on the customer situation. If you're only interested in north-south traffic, between a router and a switch is the perfect place to put it. You'll see all of those traffic flows going in and out.
Yep.
If you're interested in east-west, it gets a little bit trickier. But again, my thoughts on this are generally put it between a device of interest. You know, if you've got a database server or you've got a HMI, you've got an interesting device, my thoughts would be place it in front of that, collect the traffic out of band, and feed it onto a security tool.
Okay, and one last one.
Sure.
So are all your taps manufactured in the US?
Yes, correct. So all of our taps are manufactured in the US. They're made out of Texas. So Garland Technologies, we're based out of the US. One thing I'll say about that is that we also support MSA compliant SFPs. So again, if you need SFPs from other vendors, or we're here to provide the best hardware we can at a good price point, without management overhead and maintenance and these sorts of things that you see in some of the other devices. So again, a good cost-effective solution to our customers.
Cool. I think that's pretty much it from
Right.
the question side.
Okay. Perfect.
All right. Cool. So I presume if your risk tolerance is really sort of low, go for span, and if your risk tolerance is really sort of high, go for tap. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say it's again that risk scenario is the best one that needs to be done. If it's a small deployment, you're trying to investigate what kind of visibility you'll get out of a security tool, span's probably fine. When it goes to production and you're relying on that data for day-to-day operations, then maybe look at something else that's going to be more reliable for those traffic flows.
All right. That being said, I guess that's it for today. Thanks, Ben, for your valuable insights and time.
Thanks, Rash, and thanks for the Wavelength
And
team.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it. It was really good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.